Hey guys, it's Jesse. Today I'm going to run through how I made this maple live edge bench. Turned out really good. I used hairpin legs and it was a fairly easy project, so let's get into it.
So the first step was to get my piece to the right length. So I propped it up with a couple of scrap pieces of alder so I could cut off the ends with my circular saw. Next I measured out where exactly I needed to cut. This bench was going to be 32 inches in length, so I marked both ends and decided to cut off a piece on both sides. I used this Harbor Freight fence, ran my circular saw against that, and cut off both sides. So next I used my pipe clamps and my router sled to flatten the bottom side of this bench. If you have any questions on how I use my pipe clamps, go visit my page. I have a whole video up on how I use them. So I need the bottom side of this bench to be completely flat because I'm going to be attaching hairpin legs to the bottom of it, so I need it to not wobble, so it needs to be level all the way across. So next step was to sand. I used 60 grit sandpaper to start out. I started sanding the sides and clearing off that top layer. I didn't plane or use my router sled to level the top out. I actually just used a hand plane, which I forgot to film, and then I just did a lot of sanding after that.
Now that I got all the sanding done, what I need to do is epoxy. I'm using the Gorilla epoxy. It works great. You just have to pump and it pre-mixes it, and it doesn't go a far way, but it will get the little cracks that I need to get filled.
So the first step is just to tape off as much of the piece as possible. Tape around all the cracks and the holes and any blemishes you need to fill, and because the least amount of sanding you have to do at the end, the better. So for the Gorilla epoxy, I just actually squeeze it into the plastic container it comes in. You mix it up so it's a consistent coloring, and you just start filling in. It is a clear epoxy, so you can actually add sawdust if you want to the epoxy from the piece, and it'll blend in with the rest of the piece. Oh yeah, and don't be stupid. Make sure you're wearing gloves. I totally forgot, and I put them on now because I'm an idiot. So after letting it sit for about 10 minutes, I go ahead and peel off the tape. If you leave the tape on there for as long as it's completely dry, I promise you it will be very hard to take off. I've done that before and it sucks. So just take it off about after 10 minutes where it's still a little pliable, and they come off pretty easy. So now you need to just let it sit for about 24 hours. So next step is to sand it flush. I started with 60 grit, went to 120, and then went to 220. After sanding the epoxy off, you could really see all the character that's going to be in this board, and I was really excited to start oiling this baby up. Make sure you blow off any sawdust you can, and then use some mineral spirits to raise the grain, and also it helps clean off any remaining sawdust. After raising the grain, go ahead and sand down the board once again. I use a 400 sand net from Diablo, and it works really good just to get those last fibers completely sanded down. So I chose to use General Finish's Armor Seal for the finish. I love Armor Seal mostly because it keeps it as natural as possible, and with this piece of maple, the curls in it are just so pretty that I just wanted to keep it that way. There's no way I was putting stain on it. I always start on the back side in case the finish ends up not being exactly what you want, and then I flip over and I'll do the top side next. Now for the most rewarding part of the build. So I put 4 coats of this armor seal on this bench. It was soaking it up pretty good. Between each coat I use quadruple zero, really fine steel wool to sand down any fibers. And last step is just to mark and attach the hairpin legs. I first started by drilling some pilot holes on the marked spots where my bolts will go. Another tip would be to hold your piece in place. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. This project was absolutely awesome and fun to do. It was really easy and relatively cheap. It's something that I definitely recommend, especially if you're just starting to get into life edge stuff. This is a great starting point. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe.